So it's now time. So we would like to start why we need the integration between software and hardware in age of AI. We will start the panel discussion. First, I would like to introduce you our panelists for today. First, from Inaho, we have the co-founder and COO, Mrs. Soya Oyama. Next, from Hamano Products, the Executive Officer, Chief of Project and Planning Department, Mr. Daichi Yamashita. Realtek Holdings, Chief Knowledge Office, Vice President, Mr. Kazuhiro Hasegawa. From the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, Commerce and Information Policy Bureau, Information Economy Division, Deputy Director, Mr. Yoshiyuki Muramatsu. And lastly, the moderator is the Sustainable Open Innovation Initiative, Mr. Kosuke Nakama. So Mr. Nakama will take the floor to be the moderator from here. So I am Nakama, the moderator for today. So we are be talking about the fusion of software and hardware in AI era. So under the AI Summit, we're going to be talking about hardware. So in the fusion of software and hardware, so we have Inaho, the venture company, and the manufacturing Hamano Products that's supporting that, and the Realtek Holdings, which is supporting that, Mr. Hasegawa, and Mr. Muramatsu, who's supporting that, is today's panelist. And today's theme, let me just explain briefly. So this is what we want to say. In order to implement AI, we need both the fusion of software and hardware. So for the AI ventures, there are various developments and specific in-house data you have to come, and you have to reflect the result of these data, and you have that hardware, and you have to make a characteristics to hardware, or else the competition will not bring about. However, software and hardware, the way you make that is very different. And to these agile, you need to a software that can improve, but the hardware where it takes steps to improve. I think the way things move are different, and the development to fuse that is said to be very difficult.
So if you look at software startups, well, startups in this segment, there are a lot of software companies, and manufacturing was different. So if we put those together, there may be something new, or there are opportunities. So we are trying to develop ecosystem to support and deal the software and hardware interface. So first, I'd like to introduce each speaker to introduce himself, followed by panel discussion. With that, Oyama-san, could you introduce yourself and your business, please? My name is Oyama with Inaho. So I'd like to introduce a business that's powered by AI to develop the system and software. Well, you see the footage, we are harvesting asparagus. So human operator checks one by one, and we spend 200 days per year. It's a lot of work to harvest the vegetable. And now we use AI to make a judgment, and robot can harvest asparagus on behalf of human beings. Well, this was taken in spring, but the temperature is 40 degrees and with 90% humidity in greenhouse, and the footage was taken in summer. You see a lot of leaves of asparagus in summer. Again, we use AI to pick up right asparagus. AI looks at variations and pick the right one. So it's driving by itself. This is cucumber. Again, image recognition is done, powered by AI, and robot picks up cucumbers. I'd like to briefly introduce our company. It was back in 2017 when we started our business, so it's been 3 years. So this is agri-tech startup. It's located in Kanagawa, Kamakura city of Kanagawa Prefecture. That's where headquarters is located. And we offer what we call selective harvest offering. Instead of a human that checks vegetable and harvest, we use robot to make that happen. And this is our offering. So we are AI and robot company, and people mistakenly regard us as manufacturer. But we offer service. We are servicer or service provider. So in Japan, we have 10 farmers as customers, but a robot is offered free of charge. And then the robot does harvest automatically. And we capture information such as weight and yield, and then we charge fee to customers based on the outcome. So we charge customers pay-per-use basis. So we want to make it accessible to go after volume and then increase yield. And we wanted to use this for other services in the future. And in Japan, the penetration is 20%, and with 20% penetration, we believe that we can enjoy 25 billion revenue. This is Dutch picture. We are trying to make inroad into overseas markets, including Netherlands. So we wanted to seize opportunities there. Thank you.
続きまして、山下様お願いいたします。
Next, Yamashita-san, over to you.
はい、よろしくお願いいたします。墨田区で絹加工をしております浜野製作所という会社におります山下と申します。
I work for Hamano, based in Sumida Ward. Our corporate color is red, so we use a lot of red, and we could associate red with us and the drink company. But anyway, this is us. Let me explain our business. Originally, we started our business 40 years ago, and our founder established a business, metal processing business, and we diversified our businesses, including metal processing and plating and others. So when it comes to metal processing, we can do almost everything. And a turning point came around 2013. We started to offer services as well, such as EV or deep sea inspection. We work with other companies to offer services. And again, we used to be manufacturer, but given the needs of SMEs, we made inroad into the service sector as well. And as you can see, Oyama-san, we have been working with startups, and we started to also develop people. People's development has been added in our scope of business. So far, I haven't counted correctly, but more than 200 startups or universities and large corporations enjoy their service to develop new product. So, as I mentioned, we used to be a metal processing company. That's our original business. So if you want to develop something new, we can extend support. And for Inaho, we have been doing business for about 1 year and a half. Well, we got involved in developing prototype. They purchased parts and components from car manufacturers, and they were trying to develop a product by themselves. But they wanted to use professional support, so that's how we got involved in. And we were able to use a joint grant of the government. And also we exchanged views and technology with mass production manufacturer. So we produce products, but that's not only it. Inaho was able to capitalize our assets to develop something new. So anyway, we'd like to explain what Hamano is trying to do in the future. So you see the blue box. Well, a lot of companies and clients approached to us and asked for jobs. We got a lot of opportunities and inquiries. So with that experience, we'd like to attract more people and talents so that Hamano could get involved in POC and new product development. We wanted to offer opportunities so that people and companies can develop something new. Thank you.
山下さんありがとうございました。
山下さん、Thank you.
続きまして、長谷川さん。
Next, 長谷川さん。
はい、リアルテックホールディングスの長谷川です。
My name is 長谷川 with Realtek Holding.
クリッカー消毒中らしいんで少々お待ちください。はい、
あ
りがとうございます。もう触っちゃいましたけどね。
はい、
じゃあ
remote
お話しさせていた
controller.
だきたいと思います。長谷川和弘と申します。
Okay, my name is 和弘長谷川。
3社の会社にも関わっていてですね、いろんな側面で
Well, I have been involved in different businesses with 3 companies. I originally used to work for Rivanus that involves in scientific testing and commercialization. And then one of the companies, Ugre, and us developed the fund. I'm the vice president of the fund. And also we have a subsidiary called GlocalLink, helping startups to run businesses. So I have been working with startups and manufacturers. So from different perspectives, I'd like to share our thoughts. So regarding Realtek Fund, Ugrena, that's a public company listed first section of TSE, university startup. And also Rivanus and Ugrena and Nikko jointly established this fund, Realtek Fund. The concept is that Ugrena had a lot of challenges in the past, and we wanted to share those so that new startups can learn from them. So with that vision, we established Realtek Fund. What makes this fund unique is that you could associate fund with return by investing. But we work with GlocalLink and others. University outcome could be used to start a company and raise fund and then help them to grow. So we offer hands-on support from early stage to the developed stage. And a lot of LP limited partners are business operators. So instead of focusing on return, we wanted to use technology that resides in university and start a new business with existing companies. So operators that are interested in our vision took part in this initiative and extend support to startups. And we have been running this business over the past 5 years, and we have enjoyed a lot of collaborations with different companies, and many supported companies were selected for this startup project. And with that support, many companies have continued to grow. For example, well, I believe that AI is your area of interest. So One is
遠隔地で人が
MELTIN.
操作をし
It's
て、いろんな活動をできるようにするロボットにな
It's
っています。
operated
で、こういったと
remotely,
ころにもですね、
and robot can be
どうや
operated
って
by
遅延なく
different
通信
people
をするか
remotely.
でした
So
り
how
とか、
can we
物体を
minimize
どう認識するかというところでも
latency
AI
to
の技術ってい
operate
うのは使われ
robot?
ています
We
で、
use
2つ目がメトロ
AI.
ウェザーっていう
Robot
会社にな
can
っていて、
recognize
状
objects.
況を
And
把握できる
another example
で、それこ
is
そ
a
ドローン
meteor
前提
laser
社会みたいな
that can
話になった時
detect
に、突風の状況だったり風の
the
状況っていうのを
wind
どうやって
condition.
把握していくのか。
So think
で、それを
about
把握する
drone.
こと
You
で
need
ドローン
to
を安全に飛ばす
capture
ことができ
wind
る。
information, gust
で、
wind.
そういった
With that
風の向き
information, you
を
can
予測する
operate
技術
off
も
a
AI っていうものが
drive
使われてきています。
drone safely.
で、他にもですね、
And
イーサ
AI is used to
というよ
capture
うな
that
形で排
information.
熱を有
And
効に利
also
用していこうということで、
Ethermatic is
排
another
熱
example.
を
This company
集
is
めてそこからエネ
making
ル
the
ギーを
best
生み
use
出
of
す
heat
というような
waste
ベンチャ
to
ーがあったり
generate
もします。
energy.
で、あとはですね、ライトタッチテクノロジーというところ
This is
は、
light touch
不審
technology.
種、手に、直接手を触れ
This
ずに、
startup offers
血糖値を
non-intrusive
測ることができるという技
without
術になってます。
contact
通常だと注射針を刺してちょっと
glucose
痛い思いをし
sensor.
ながら血糖値を測っていくんですけれども、
You
それを
have to bear
触
with
れることなく
pain,
血糖値を
with
測
needle.
って、でそこから
Without
健
pain,
康状態
you
というの
can
を
check your
AI でシミュレーションしてア
glucose.
ウトプットする
And
ことができる
AI
というような
simulates
形で、
health
最先端の技術もやっぱ
status
りいろんなところで AI っていうの
and
が活用されていて、
gives you
すご
output.
くどの会社も
So
ハード、
AI
ソ
has
フト
been
両方
used
と
in
もが
different
重要な会社になっています
use
なので、今
occasions,
日はそういった視点
and
からお
hardware
話
and
ができれば
software
いい
play
かなと
crucial
思
role
ってい
in
ます。
each
よろしく
case.
お願いします。
So from that perspective, I'd like to enjoy today's discussion. Thank you.
続きまして村松さんお願いできますでしょうか。
Next, Muramatsu-san.
経済産業省の村松と申します。
My name is
よろしくお願いします。
Muramatsu. I work for Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry.
日本の政府のですね、スタートアップに対す
So
る
for my
支
part,
援内容
I'd
です
like
が
to explain how Japanese government extends support to startups and direction and what we are trying to do.
でまずですね、経済産業省の中でいろんな議論をしているんですけれども、
We
一
have
つ明確になってい
discussed
ますのが、海
a
外
lot
諸
of
外国ですね、
opportunities, but if you compare Japan against other companies, I know that large corporations are working really hard, but in Japan, over the past 20 years, we haven't really enjoyed positive growth. And one of the biggest reasons is that new companies don't have enough energy and power. Newly established companies don't have energy and power. So, Ministry would like to extend support startups that has a lot of opportunity. For example, we launched a project called J Startup. So the purpose is to extend support to startups in Japan. So this is a vision for J Startup. It says from fad to culture. Well, I know that it's more like a trend, it's a fad to invest in startups, but we don't want to make it one-off. We wanted to make it a culture in Japan. I think that's important. And then once Hero is created, Hero could enhance the startup status so that venture business in Japan or venture business ecosystem could be strengthened.
Specifically, we have worked on various measures, and what I'm working on is this initiative called Startup Factory. So this initiative started in 2019, but the concept here is, as Mr. Nakamura explained, software startup and hardware startup, when they are compared, hardware startup tends to be costly, more costly and more time consuming. So if private sector funds flows in, then that's fine, but return on investment tends to be low. So that's where, as a country, we started this support initiative in 2019. Then there has been development now, and manufacturing startup ecosystem business is underway. And as with Inaho, we have selected startups in manufacturing sector, and while supporting them, we have come up with output of those startups. and have disseminated such outputs to various startups. So when compared to software, hardware type operators have to consider the mass production mechanism and design and deployment into society. So those all involve time, and there is a higher probability of error and mistakes. So we are providing support to hardware-based business operators or startups so that the other startups can follow more easily. So this year, these 9 startups have been selected for our program, and we are providing support to them. And next year, we will continue with our initiative. So if you are interested, please keep paying attention to the progress. So our goal, as listed here, is to raise the level or help promote the growth of startups, especially the top-notch startups. At the same time, we would like to raise the presence of startups in Japan as compared to those overseas. And also, while supporting startups, we would like to identify opportunities for collaboration with financial institutions or major firms in a bid to create an ecosystem. This, in turn, will give further momentum to the startup ecosystem in Japan as a whole. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, we have 4 panelists. And in the actual business, they are well acquainted to one another, so we could expect very free and open discussion. Now, going back a bit and move on to the panel discussion, we have 3 key themes. First theme is the necessity of hardware in the age of AI. That's the first theme. So hardware tends to be seen as difficult. So why is it necessary for AI startups to be involved in hardware? So I'd like to have Mr. Oyama from Inaho to talk about that. So the AI technologies could be utilized by manufacturers, but the hardware could be you could tap on the hardware capability of manufacturers, but why is it necessary to you yourself to use hardware or to come up with hardware? Thank you for the question. The reason for us working with hardware ourselves is that there is no manufacturers that was suitable in terms of the collaboration with us. So what we are doing is our activities are in the area of robots. In Japan, there are agricultural robots, but the sets of technologies that are used by the existing manufacturers were not really compatible or were kind of different from what we are trying to do. And initially, we tried to see if there is any partner overseas, but we couldn't find any specific firm. So we started working with university first, and then we did it on our own in the area of hardware. So back then you had the relation with Hamano-san. With Hamano-san, it's about a year ago when we started working together. So MVP was established first. Then after that, from Misumi or Monotaro or Amazon, we bought components and assembled them, but it wasn't sophisticated enough to sell to end users. But at the same time, we couldn't write a specification and give to big manufacturers due to the capabilities or capacity within our firm. So we looked for a partner who could work with us in a hands-on manner, and then we came to Hamano as the partner. So did you meet with us first, or did you meet Hamano before you met us? No, about at the same time. So initially, the hardware didn't function at all, but no one just gave data. It would have worked well if data was provided. I didn't talk about this, but initially the headquarters was based in Kamakura. It was far. Usually venture startups are based in Nihonbashi district or Shinbashi district, easily accessible places, but the firm was based in Kamakura prefecture, so far from Tokyo. But they were collecting know-hows and technologies from various manufacturers, and they themselves come up with their own system. So I was impressed by that. Yes. So we found it quite interesting. The key, one interesting point that we found was that they have very good team that can conduct analysis once they have data. But the most difficult part was how to collect data. So they had to start from scratch and started collaborating with Habano. So once they got to a certain level, they could perform analysis. And hardware finally caught up with the software initiative. Yes, for about a year and a half, we didn't have hardware capability, and hardware didn't function. But once the hardware became functional, we could collect data, then could perform analysis on it, then could involve many people. Yes, many AI ventures say that as long as there's data, they can do this and that. But the difficult first step is to how to secure data. So it's very few companies can get to that stage on their own. Many firms just place orders to other firms and receive products, but they did it on their own mostly. And Inaho Production Committee was established, and that's where discussion took place. And there are challenges that couldn't be resolved by AI alone, because AI players do not think about harvesting asparagus, but Inaho posed the challenge to AI territory. And that was interesting viewpoint. Yes, robot, whether it is robots or AI, they are means, methods. So in genome modification or editing, or genome editing could have been one of the approaches, but we couldn't come up with an approach back then. So in a way, things that can be resolved by AI alone usually are being done by others. So something that have not been done may involve hardware as well as AI. So now that we have touched upon development, so let us move on to the challenges. So challenges in the combining software and hardware. So what is the challenges that you found or you are still facing? There are many difficulties, so it's difficult to summarize challenges, but in the area of agriculture, when I think about AI, of course, we have to start with collecting data, as you would imagine. But agriculture has seasonality as well as regional features that come with different data sets. So, for example, there are data that can be available only in October. Then if we cannot obtain data in October, we have to wait for one more year. And we need certain number of data points. So it's meaningless if we take data just from one point in Tokyo, then we have to produce products and deploy it to the society and create many data points and collect a certain quantity of data and keep updating the data. So compared with other AI data, so data collection was difficult. And it was the first time for us to work on this agriculture-related initiative. So it took a lot of learning on our end as well. So these days, when people talk about AI, there are areas of application such as construction site, restaurants, and agriculture. So the AI as a solution needs to stay close to where challenges lie. So agriculture seems to be the area that could be time-consuming. So many people come to us with ideas on how AIs could be used, and they say that as long as there's data, they can perform analysis. But what's difficult is to secure data of different types, because in the morning and at night, data are different. Yes. So within the, for example, the greenhouse, the humidity level and temperature and sunlight levels are different at different timing of day. So it's difficult to collect data in that kind of situation, but it's a challenge that we are facing even today. So startup companies usually have technologies, and when they think about how to use their technology, I wonder where they can apply their technology. They say that they have this and that technology, and so one time, in the middle of summer, when people are usually enjoying high school baseball game, in the middle of heat, some workers were harvesting asparagus, and they were having difficulty in harvesting. And I could firsthand see the difficulty faced by the people on the ground, and being close to those workers, some AI startup firm developed their solution. So unlike software, in the area of hardware, the hardware machine may not function or may function in an unexpected way. So until the hardware is put into operation, there could be, you won't know all the challenges that could be there. So for example, deep learning, that's quite topical. People say that when there are many data points, then the learning will become successful. But if all the data are poor, then even if you have a million data, if they are poor, then the learning will not be successful. So important thing is to secure quality data. So that is an important viewpoint when thinking about hardware. So there's I do not think of a firm in Japan that's doing something similar to what Inaho is doing. So maybe not in Japan, but I'm trying not to say the word AI venture in agriculture. What we try to do is a resolution of issues. So methods or means could be anything. Overseas, as a tool, they use robots, or they use AI as tools. So there are two companies abroad that are doing something similar to us, and both of them are in the commercial trial phase. So they are kind of rivals for us. So we have to continue with our efforts. So you were acquainted with asparagus farmers initially? Well, at the beginning, a friend of mine is a farmer, and he said it's troublesome to take out all the weeds. And I helped him one time, and it was so troublesome. So I said, I do not want to do that any longer. So together with a co-founder, we talked about what kind of solutions we could come up with. So we started with the Google searches. And we were talking about that in Kyushu, and coincidentally, there was an asparagus farmer, and the farmer asked us to come up with a solution to help them grow asparagus.
So you said you measured, and it was like 12 centimeters, yes. The yielding is 12 centimeters, the standard. So you have to see whether the 12 centimeters meets. But human can do more things. So I think the robots can do, and if the determination is different by a robot, then we'll have the AI to do it.
先ほどおっしゃられたまさにその AI も
So you
ハード
talked
の手
about
段だ道具だ
AI,
っていうのはまさに
hard, and
でその
is
時に多分
means,
ハードルになるのがハードを
and I
道具
think
と
the
して使うこと
hurdle
のとっ
is
つきにく
how
さ
to
難しさ
use
だと
the hard as a tool, the
最
difficulty.
初に浜野さんに施策をお願いした
So
時ってどう
when
いうお
I
願いの
asked
仕
you
方をしたん
for,
ですか
when you asked for the protocol, how did you ask for the
いい
protocol?
話なのか
I'm not sure whether I can say, but we didn't know how to ask, to be quite honest.
もともといろんな部品集めて組み
So
立
we
てて
collected various parts and assembled, and that worked. We asked you briefly, can you create this maybe on a diagram information that's less than 1 page? And we sent that over and asked, please make this. Is I think the way we
でもこれっ
ask.
て結構先ほど村松さんからご紹介いただいた
But as Muramatsu-san explained, the startup factory.
ちょうどそのいろんな会社さんからの相
So
談で
from the various companies, consultation has been coming along, but how we can make the requirement definitions in the prototype to what the goal is going to be. We weren't sure, neither us or the clients, and we want to make that. And Inaho-san came with us,
どこですか
said,
痛いしか言わないみたいななんか
said, ouch.
要件提供をやりながら
So as we were doing the requirement definition, they were trying to identify. So it was a very good learning for us too. So if you ask this and this, like this, then they'll provide that to us. So it was basically an experimental way of learning.
ごめんね
I do apologize, sorry.
多
But I
分そういう
think
状態
that
だったからうまくいったんですよ
because it worked because it was that kind of
ハードウェアを
situation.
かじってる人
The hardware, people who know about hardware, when you ask for consultations, they ask a more concrete, a fuzzy specification when you don't know what that's going to be used, which is inefficient. But Inaho just came. This is what, not the whole thing, but you did provide the concept, and you asked for the most optimized. But the way you manufacture, I'll ask the professional, but the output, I want you to come with this quality which we want. So I think it was a very easy relationship. That's why I think that it went well, right? Yeah.
でもそういうと製造業側からも
So from the manufacturing side, you need to have, there is a necessity to ask things from the startup companies. You already have that as a know-how. I think it's really case by case, but whilst I don't think there are know-hows, but trust, and I think it's really to do with communications. So there are various things such as Zooms, tools, but I think at first you have to discuss face to face and play around. I think that time is very, very important. And Oyama-san were very proactive. I don't know this, but what to do this. Then we can also give a feedback. Perhaps this and this, and we're able to find the direction or the roadmap.
ソフトとハードの融合っていう分野
So the fusion between software and hardware. So Inaho's company is, I think there are more IT-related people, and roughly half the people are hardware-related. Yes. So I think half between soft and hardware. And the way that you develop and the process and the schedule seems very different. But how do you come up with a scrum? But I think that's something that we do trial and error. But depending on each phase, I think the method is different. Once you realize that once you have a fixed way, you go across, but I think up to what level you verify that, and up to there you have to kind of combine various ways. So once you are able to verify the values, then how you can manufacture and how you can curb the cost. And during that time, if the brick, if the tree is too thick, you want to kind of make that more thin. But there's some kind of a meaning there. So if you don't think about that too much, it might break. So I think communication is important. And during the phase where you are trying to find out the value, how much engineers you have to analyze, and I think those kind of technologies are also needed. And what is interesting, AI or IT, when we ask such people to do manufacturing, I want to do this, but in order to realize that they don't understand the bottleneck on the hardware. So there are people who want to say something. People say that, what about this hardware? I want you to do this. So they kind of give an opinion which is not their profession, but people who are in the world of manufacturing think that they really want you to do that. And when you try to do that, then they later on tell you that's too expensive, so it's not good, even though you only manufactured what you were told. So when people from different spheres make hardware, the culture and the knowledge that you have is different. So to be able to find the best optimal part is hard, is the most difficulty where software people find in terms of manufacturing, rather than time of the manufacturing. But I think the prototype or the discussion type is more important. Of course, you can make, and in the manufacturing world, we can do reworks. But at the field, we want many people to understand. And when people just say, just create, and then we'll discuss. This is perhaps stainless, use a stainless or something. So I also, through manufacturing, I speak with many startup companies, but the prototype is different. The experiences are different, and they speak from their own experiences. So I think there are such differences. But recently I went to the factory from Hamano, and I thought at that time, but when you bend and when you try to strengthen that, it all looks the same, but I pondered whether there is any difference. I do apologize, but depending on that, the strength and the cost is different. But if you don't understand that, people ask, what's so different? So I think the recognition between the two parties have to be aligned, or else it's very hard to have a discussion. So I think those are very important. So I think it's okay not to know at first, but I think you just have to be interested to want to know. Our craftsmen too, when they speak with startup companies, they come to the field. Rather than me speaking to these people, when I say that if you have difficulties, go to Oyama-san, not go to Yamashita-san. The client's having some difficulties, so what's your concern? What are you having a problem? Then you are able to come up with a correct solution. So I think the requester, so if it's Hamano products, they think that, please make this, but they don't know what they really want to make. So it's like a sense of that, whether they understand that they are developing the product together. But I think even if you don't give the answer, Hamano products will do that. What do you think, Oyama-san? So as you say, we are not a professional, or we don't have that much of an experience. But having said that, where we work with, who we want to partner with, as I mentioned earlier, people who we can communicate very well, I think that's important. And the protocol is very different. But at the end, whether you can work well as a person, so we often go to sauna, or we go out drinking together, that kind, if you can build such relationship, and then it's easier to work together. So at first I said that Kamakura is very, very far away. But when we first created the first prototype to Inaho, we didn't have a special feeling. I do apologize. But when I came up with this plan and procurement of cash with Oyama-san, the world which Inaho wanted to create, I understood for the first time what they wanted to do. Among the agriculture, the selective agriculture and the centralized agriculture, there are two types. And they wanted to help those who on the former, and I'm an Inaho fan and I'm a Oyama-san fan, and that was the relationship that we were able to build, and that was the biggest change for me. So to be able to speak in the business layer, in other words, the start companies have to be very honest. It's not a business layer, especially people in the manufacturing world. They're not in the same business world where startup companies think. People do work whether they like that person or not. They don't decide on the quotations. Sona is important, right? You want to work and develop with people who go to the Sona. That's the first. Maybe it's different now, but that was the case in the past, right? Yeah. So whilst we were talking about sauna, now we'd like to move on to the next theme. So what we just discussed is that AI venture, soft and hardware is doing together is important. And I think you need funding there. And as an ecosystem, manufacturing and VC, how you can construct an ecosystem is the next theme. So from Realtek, Hasegawa-san, so the infusion of software and hardware, is there going to be enough funding? So my answer is that yes, and I think there is procurement that is made. In the context of AI, we have money coming into AI ventures, but I think I see differences in how these funding comes. There are many AI ventures today, and what they can do is that their characteristics seems to be all quite similar, so we need a differentiation. So how you can differentiate is what you can do, so it's basically the service. So through AI, what you are going to realize, so in other words, the solution. So like Inaho, to come up with the business model, whether you can do that or not. So it's not just AI analysis, but in addition to that, to go to a sauna, to have the strength in a hardware, or else the competitive edge would be different. And as a market, it's easier to show that you are able to grow. That's why I think Inaho is being focused by many. So I think it's hard multiplied soft has a competitive advantage has a competitive advantage rather than just having a software, not only in Japan but also abroad. So I think the difficulties that you had brought your competitive edge. Is competitive edge one of your concerns today? So when I think about the world, there are one or two companies. So whether we really want to do a full-fledged flight, but in Japan, the market dip and the market fit. If the market fit doesn't occur, it's because the technology is weak, but the client, the farmer. So if it was in Holland, giving you an example of tomato, there are 20,000 tomato farmers in Japan, and in Holland, there's only 250 farmers. However, in Holland, they are making 1.25 times more than Japan, but in terms of national land, they are 1/9 that of Japan. So Holland makes a lot of tomatoes, yes. So the capital is collected, and they're able to do farming as a business. And if you're going to make a product for that, suited for that, or if you're going to do a business including small farmers and collect these small farmers, I think that is the market fit and technology, and whether that matches with the prices, I think are the challenges.
So whether you are globally competitive, I think that makes a big difference. Agriculture varies from country to country. Market size is different. So rather than AI startups, hardware startups or global companies or startups that are going after global opportunities, well, may have a bigger opportunity. I think that's what makes this business interesting. So how are you trying to compete in global market? Well, Japanese are relatively shy. We tend to look inward. How can we compete in global market? I think that's one of the challenges. How should we devise global strategy? From a different perspective, it's not just about manufacturing. I think we have to think global competitiveness. I think we have to be edgy. It's better to be edgy, to go abroad. Well, we have abroad startups to overseas markets and introduce players there. It could be a niche market, but if you are edgy, if you can offer solution there, you could attract a lot of attention. I think you may be well received. Instead of saying that you can do a lot of analytics with AI, if you can demonstrate one strength that no one can beat, you may have a better chance to win. So when I look at startups, we tend to focus on quality or performance. As a manufacturer, size has to be right. But sometimes it's not really important. If you look at a dry cleaner, the customer want their products right. Even if you have only one day, you have to make it. So we have to have a different perspective. We call ourselves as a manufacturing plus service player. So even you are a manufacturer, you have to do something that a service provider does in order to really demonstrate value. Yes, it has to be market-driven. It has to be customer-driven. We need to identify what customers want and then offer your services and products. I think it's time for manufacturers to change. Well, because you worked with startups, I think you were able to change and then grow together. So as a startup that focuses on hardware and software integration, do you see any value in starting business in Japan? Do you see any competitive edge? Yeah, for us, we also support startups in Southeast Asia. They have technology and they can recognize challenges. But we don't see, Hamano in Southeast Asia, something similar to Hamano, because manufacturing is not easy. If you don't have manufacturing capability, you can't. Of course, you could if you have a few weeks. But what they wanted yesterday has changed already today. And if we want to produce quality products, Japan is definitely better than South Asian players. Yeah, definitely. When we make inroad into overseas markets, initial stage has to be developed in Japan because they don't have a town like Akihabara outside Japan. Hamano-san. Well, you get a request in midnight and then make it happen in the morning. If you say that everyone wants your service, well, if it's a special, that's a special case though. Japan is compared against Shinchan. Well, a town like Akihabara may be available in Shinchan in China, but not Hamano. Hamano can develop with you and Hamano can go to sauna spa with you. And Hamano is a team player. In Japan, we have Hamano, but startups in Southeast Asia does understand what we are good at. That's why they come to us. They want to partner with somebody like Hamano. Not just Southeast Asia, players around the world are looking for somebody like Hamano. It's different from starting business. I think that's one of the key words to describe strengths of Japan. Whether it's Taiwan or China, we often discuss this with venture capital. I didn't understand the difference in the past, but Hasegawa-san told me in the past, whether it's China or Shinchan, they are really good at producing in mass volume, but they are not really good at develop something that's not really defined or finalized in terms of specification. Well, in a nutshell, in order to describe current situation in Japan, I think what he said is right. It's only Japan. Player can produce everything by itself, starting from materials all the way to hardware, final products. Japanese people are really hardworking. They pay attention to details that they are into or particular about many different things. In the phase of development, I think we can really use our competitive edge or strengths with that respect. AI technology in Japan may not be ahead in comparison to others, but if you combine AI with hardware, we definitely have competitive edge against others, and then we can win in global market if we combine those two together. Well, in Sumida, we have love, not AI. But that does make sense to us. Yeah, that's important. I forgot what I was trying to say. Well, anyway, what I wanted to say is that we wanted to, enhance the power of Japan. We want to win. So we did study. And then what I thought is that, as Hasegawa-san mentioned, AI is a new technology. And if you combine that with manufacturing capability, I think Japan still have competitive advantage. As for software, the US and GAFA, maybe leading. Japan may not be able to compete against them. But if you think about Society 5.0, cyber, and physical factors are combined, meaning that we need to really see opportunities in the fusion of hardware and software. So we'd like to extend support to manufacturers as well. Then Inaho has to be successful. You have to win. And then Inaho has to explain that it's thanks to Hamano, to the global audience. Yeah, we need your investment then. Okay, so we have 3 minutes to go. Time flies. We covered a lot. So to wrap up, one by one, can you share your message with the audience? I think many of them are AI experts, maybe? Oyama-san? Well, we are not an AI expert, but I'm here. But in terms of integration of software and AI and hardware, we learned a lot of lessons. So I hope that you can learn from us. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Well, as we discussed today, it's not just a company versus company, it's individual versus individual. I have been working with Oyama-san as a person, as an individual. That's what our employees, I think, would feel. Power of individual, power of, I think, skills and passion, I think, would generate quality products and services. So we'd like to continue to build such relation. Indeed. Well, AI startups, come to us if you want to get involved in manufacturing. Large companies that are interested in AI should be able to enjoy collaboration with us. We do have a fund. I hope that we can work together. Well, startups, manufacturers, venture capitals, ministry is going to support them so that we can strengthen Japan as a country. If anything, please come to us and seek for advice. We will do our best to support you. Thank you so much for your continued cooperation.
はい、ということでございまして、ちょうど時間ぴったりになっちゃいまし
With
た。
that,
ということで、
time is up.
改めて登壇者の皆さんに
Speakers,
拍手いただければと思います。
Please
ありが
give
とうございました。
big hands to them.
ありがとうござい
Thank you
ました。
so much. Thank you.
これにてセッション AI 時代のソフトとハードの融合を
We
終了
will
いた
close
し
the
ます。
session.
次のセッション
Fusion of
は
software and
17時
hardware
から
in
とな
AI
ります。
era. The next session
お
will
時間
start
ま
at
で
5 p.m.
今しばらくお
Thank
待
you.
ちくださいませ。